last time I spoke with Joe Yeck, the head golf coach at Kean University, he was about to begin the fall season with a men's team that hadn't been at the school since 1986 and with a women's team that had never been there before. The fall season is now over, and now Coach Yeck is looking ahead to the spring. He joins me now to catch us up on both teams. Joe, pleasure to see you again, and thanks so much for coming on this morning.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me again. Appreciate it.
Our pleasure. So, Joe, what I said was no mistake. You are the head coach of the men's team and the women's team. How has it been juggling both, and what has it been like having golf on campus this past semester?
Yeah, it's been great. Obviously, really enjoyed coaching both the men's and the women's golf teams at Kean. Had an opportunity to do that at a couple other schools and just really enjoyed the experience. Having golf on campus, really thankful for all the support we've had, from President Repollet down to Kelly Williams, Therese Doyle, everyone within our athletic administration. The support has been awesome, and just really looking forward to building off the momentum we had in the fall.
Now, both the men's and women's rosters, they have a lot of freshmen on them. How do you think they performed in the fall season, and were they able to develop a chemistry?
Yeah, as you know, having a new program, obviously having a lot of new people, a lot of freshmen, a lot of young players coming in and being able to compete for playing time right away. One of the things we emphasized last year during the recruiting cycle was, you're going to have an opportunity as a freshman to come on campus and play, right away. So the competition, especially on the men's side, having a lot of depth was really cool from the get-go. So, a lot of those young kids had opportunity to step right in and play in tournaments. We were able to see kind of what they were made out of. And hopefully that experience so far early on will allow them to grow, as players moving forward. So another thing we really emphasize within our program is to build team chemistry, build that team culture. So we want our kids to get to know one another. We want them to obviously respect each other, do things off the golf course as well. So, team bonding opportunities. I know we, in the winter time right before the semester ended, we went and did team bowling, going out for team dinners, whatever it might look like. So the more opportunities you get to go and be around each other is what it's all about, and building those relationships. So it's been a lot of fun so far.
Now, you're not doing all of this alone. You've had help from your assistant coach, Connor Jones. How important has he been for these two teams?
Yeah, Coach Jones has been great. Obviously brings that young enthusiasm to our program each and every day. Coach Jones, this is his first opportunity to coach college golf. He's hit the ground running with everything involving recruiting, the day-to-day, the technical side of things. He's also a physical trainer, so he brings that element as well to our program. So yeah, I'm looking forward to having him again this semester and moving forward.
Now, your men's team won its 2 tri-match tournaments in the fall, including one at your home course, Galloping Hills. Can you tell us a little about these wins and how this may help you build for the future?
Yeah, it was great. If you look back on that first semester, the first thing that really pops out to my mind is that day at Galloping Hills. Just all the support we had on campus, and coming over to Galloping Hills, everyone from the president through our athletic administration, board members, some of the campus community, was really special. And we played really well that day to be able to win the tournament. We shot 300 as a team. One of our players, Logan Perone, had 8 birdies and shot 67, which was his personal best. So what a start to the first semester. And then later on in the semester, we went up to Marywood and played in their tournament in Pennsylvania and won another tournament. So yeah, really builds a lot of confidence for our current players. Also with our recruiting, a lot of those kids who we want to attract to our program, they want to be a part of something special. So they want a program to come to where we go and play in competitive tournaments. We travel, and obviously winning really helps. So yeah, that was an awesome start to our first year.
Now, I'm curious about this next answer. Your men's roster is currently bigger than your women's roster. How do you determine who plays and who sits out during a certain tournament?
Yeah, that's been a lot of fun. We'll continue to work on our women's, building our women's roster, and hopefully in the next couple of years we'll have even more players. And that's pretty typical at the college level. The men's teams tend to have a few more women, men than women on their programs. But yeah, the freshmen with our men's side, we had a lot of depth. So right from the get-go, we were qualifying for tournaments. So, going back to that recruiting part, they had opportunities to play right away and compete for those, starting spots. So there's a lot that goes into it, everything from recent scores to track records at those courses that maybe we're playing at. Academics also falls in line with that. Communication, being coachable, being on time, all those things play a factor when we're trying to decide who's going to play in those starting lineups. But yeah, it was great that first semester because each and every tournament seemed like we had at least one spot that some of our guys were qualifying for, which was really cool.
Now, what are some areas that you focus on during practice or that you've made as a point of emphasis heading into the spring to help your players improve their games?
Yeah, we really emphasize short games. So, if you look at a lot of these tournaments, tee to green, a lot of these players are pretty similar, especially at the Division III level. But where the better players, the better programs really differentiate themselves is with their short game. So, giving yourself those opportunities in practice to work on your bunker play, your chipping, a lot of putting. That's really important. So even when you don't have your A game tee to green, when you're out in tournaments, those better players, those better teams really are able to kind of hone in on their short game and make a difference in that perspective. So not only doing it in practice, but doing it with competition. So we're really big on competition. So whether it's doing drills by yourself with your teammates in small groups, I think the more opportunities you get to compete in practice allows you to build that confidence, allow you to be more tournament ready in those situations if you're doing it in practice. So those are some of the things that we really work on is working on our short game.
Short game is so important. Now, are there any players you think will show a big improvement in their game this spring or be ready to take that next step?
I think there's a bunch of people I'm really excited to kind of see what that next step looks like. On the women's side, a lot of our players are pretty similar in terms of their golf experience. Only been playing golf for a few years. So really trying to work with them just on the technical side, their short game, navigating around a golf course. I think they all showed promise and improvement throughout the fall, and we'll look to continue to do that in the spring. And then on the men's side, we're led by two juniors, Pat Murray and Logan Perrone. I mean, we're very fortunate to have them come into our program this year and already have played college golf and at the national level too. So they lead our team. And then I think there's a couple freshmen who got a lot of experience this past semester, Ryan Small and Sean Dunn. And we feel like, they have the games where if they have the right mindset and the desire to really become really good college golfers, I think they can do that. So I'm really looking forward to those two individually this spring to kind of take that next step.
Now, the season is split into two parts of the year. Is there a big difference between playing in the fall versus playing in the spring?
So in terms of the tournament schedule and the balance, it's pretty similar. We play a pretty similar amount of tournaments in the fall and the spring. The biggest difference is the weather. So obviously when you're coming off the summer months, you're playing a lot more, especially outside. So it's a little bit easier to kind of get in that rhythm, early on in the fall semester. Whereas in the spring, as you know, up in this area, you got the cold weather and the snow sometimes. So, unfortunately, you have to do some stuff indoors and then, trying to build that, that momentum and take off that rust early on in the spring season. So we got started this past week. We're going to be out on the course this week, working at the range. And then in about 10 days, we're going to go down to North Carolina and have a spring break trip. So we're really excited about that. Hopefully we'll have a little bit more warmer weather down there to kind of kickstart our spring season. And, but yeah, that's probably the biggest difference is just the weather in the spring versus the fall.
Yeah, and losing your ball in the leaves in the fall time is no picnic either. I've done that.
That can be tough.
That can be tough too. So do you think you'll take a different approach in any of the ways you coach to be more effective this spring?
Yeah, as a coach, you're always looking to get better. You're not really doing your job if you're not trying to improve your skill set as well to not only improve yourself, but that skill set that you can continue to develop will help your players, obviously. So I'm always trying to learn. But I think the one thing that we talked about for this spring is trying to do a little bit more individual workouts, having 15 to 18 players at each practice sometimes between the men and the women. Even though we do sometimes go down into smaller groups, sometimes it's harder to do a lot of individual work. So that's one of the things that we're going to focus on this spring is to kind of, work, a little bit more individually to focus in on each kid.
And finally, Joe, what is your outlook for the spring season and what are your goals for the rest of the year in its entirety?
Yeah, continue to talk about building off that momentum for the fall. We're really excited. All of our kids are ready to get going. We've already had a couple practices, like I mentioned. So just building off of what we had in the fall. And I think in the spring season, our women are continuing to improve. Hopefully, their scoring averages can continue to go down. On the guys side, we won 2 tournaments already in the fall. There's no reason why we can't continue to compete at the highest level here in the spring. I'm big on competition. So like I said, we're going to play in some really tough tournaments, challenge our kids, even though we're young and don't have a lot of experience. I think it's what our kids want. Going back to that recruiting as well, the kids that want to come into our program want to play in some of those better tournaments. So we'll have our hands full this spring, but I think there's no reason why we can't continue to compete and build off of what we already have.
Joe Yeck, head coach of the men's and women's golf teams at Kean University. Thanks so much for taking the time this morning, and best of luck this spring.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
Head over to ONNJ.com for the latest news and sports anytime. Well, I can't believe I'm saying this, but baseball season is almost here, and I'm jealous because our very own Gabrielle Raucci was in Port St. Lucie for the last several days scouting out the Mets as they got ready for the 2025 season. She joins me now. Gabrielle, I can't imagine how much fun you were having down there, so thanks for taking the time to jump on this morning. I know it was an early flight back this morning, and welcome to the show, first time.
Yes, thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. So let's just, first off, let me ask this. It's been warming up a little bit in New Jersey, but still nowhere near as warm down there. How much did you enjoy the Florida weather?
It was great to be out in the sun. I feel like, especially in this time of the year, you kind of forget what it's like to feel the warmth on your skin and just have the sun shining and be able to put your windows down. That was a big thing for me. I did notice that people in Florida typically don't drive with their windows down, so perhaps they stuck out a little bit with that. But it was overcast the first day that I was down there with the camp. It was, maybe 70, breezy with clouds in the sky, but other than that, the next 2-3 days, beautiful.
Fantastic to hear. So let's talk the Mets now. Juan Soto proved himself in New York last year with the Yankees. How's he looking in blue and orange?
I mean, as everyone saw, right, in his first at-bat in the first spring training game, I think it was maybe the third or fourth pitch, home run, just like he did last season. You can definitely say that he is a man who lives up to the hype, especially coming off this historic signing of his, the 15 years, $765 million. Truly proven right out the gate that he was worth it. I mean, it's incredible to see. Truly, he's like the Michael Jordan of baseball, if you will, great pure hitter right out the gate in the blue and orange. Awesome.
I can't wait to see what he does. Now, another big bat in the lineup is Pete Alonso, who in his first year of free agency gave Mets fans quite the scare with this offseason and how long he took to make a decision. But he's staying where it all started, 2 years, $54 million. What do you think of that deal, and should it have taken so long?
I think especially somebody like Pete who came up through the Mets system, who's beloved by Mets fans, right? He's very much about baseball, very much about family. I think that maybe the amount of time that it took was just to make sure that it was the right thing for his family, right? Even being in the press box with Mike Piazza himself, he was trying to give some sort of insight on what it's like to go through even just the most basic of contract signings and things like that with baseball. With Pete Alonso, right, and Piazza said it himself, guys that hit 40 home runs a year just don't walk on the street. So for him to take the time, I think, especially with, Steve Cohen, the Mets owner, and David Stearns talking with Gary Cohen at Amazing Day directly to the fans about what the negotiations were like, saying that you really didn't like them, and not for nothing, with the push and pull and maybe how Pete's agent, Scott Boras, maybe, had gotten the Soto deal done first in that first week of December, maybe made people think that Pete was going to be coming up soon after. But again, I think kind of squashing whatever sort of stigma or speculation that was coming from how long it was taking by speaking directly to Pete. And in his press event, he did say that Stearns and Cohen did come down to Tampa to speak with him directly almost immediately after Amazing Day. So I think, right, it was something that was absolutely always going to happen. I think Pete, has expressed more than once that he's always wanted to be a Met. And maybe the amount of time was just making sure that it was the right thing for his family, making sure that, right, he was going to be compensated because he is a phenomenal athlete. He's, leading the league in scoops, 40 plus home run hitter. He's set to beat the Darryl Strawberry record this season. So I think testing free agency, testing how much you're worth is one of those things that, maybe fans don't necessarily understand at the very core of it in baseball, but it's an important thing, especially when you're that talented.
Now, this leads me into my next question. The top of their lineup is going to be Francisco Lindor, Juan Soto, Pete Alonso. You got to see them firsthand. How big of a triple threat are the three of those guys in the 1, 2, and 3 spots?
It's incredible. I mean, again, Mets fans there have been great years for the Mets as well. And being maybe a more pitching staff heavy team, having such heavy hitters in the 1, 2, 3, it's, I mean, you can't really make assumptions just yet, but I'm one of those people who truly believes you can't really judge a team until they take the field. But on numbers alone, on history alone, right, you can't expect anything but an exciting and probably high in home run season. You've got those three guys right there. Francisco Lindor last season, right, single-handedly brought the Mets to the playoffs with Pete Alonso himself too, right, in the Brewers game. He took the team in the ninth inning with that home run shot. It's just a continuation of great hitting, homegrown stars, and then you've got Juan Soto who's coming in and he's going to be there for the long haul. It's going to be an exciting time to be a Mets fan, and it feels really good to say that.
It does. It feels great to hear it as a Mets fan, as I know you are. Now, can you talk a little about how their pitching staff is shaping up this spring? Hopefully we get to see a little more of Kodai Senga this year than we did last year.
I actually got to see him throw live BP. I want to say it was Lindor, Soto, Alonso. Maybe Alvarez was in that first mix for when I was sitting right at the net the other day, and he looks on. You know what I mean? That ghost fork, that is unhittable. I mean, even in live BP, joking around, Juan Soto was shaking his head like, "Oh no, no, that's not the one that I'm gonna be able to hit maybe." But in terms of right his other mix, his fastball, right, high velo, that kind of thing, you notice that especially with the Mets pitching staff, right? You've got Jeremy Hefner and Desi. That's kind of the mix that you've got going on. Is it's more high velo and trying to introduce maybe some more breaking balls, things with more movement. Especially to get hitters. I like to maybe jokingly say that the NL is the unexpected breaking ball league, whereas the AL is more fastball. I think people would probably fight me on that, but especially Kodai, who's looking healthy, has been saying that he's been working on mechanics to be able to get through the whole season. Right, he went down in the first outing last year. He looked really, really good. I think somebody again who fans should be really excited about is Clay Holmes, especially right making the transition from being a reliever. There's a little bit of controversy with our crosstown rivals with his saves in that sense. But again, when you're inheriting somebody else's first 5-6 innings, what more can you really do? It's not your fault in that sense, but him making that jump, right? They stretched him to 3 innings even before games started. I want to say in the first couple of days that they reported to spring training, he was stretched to 3 innings, looked great, and he pitched a perfect 3 in their first game. He looked incredible, right? Introduction of that kick change, which is, a little bit different in terms, I guess, because he has such a high release point, right? That ability for him to maybe cut the ball with spiking the finger a little bit. So he has that more, that higher release point for it to kind of, spin sideways or whatever. It's definitely going to be something that will get batters looking. And the other one, right? I mean, Sean Manaea. You've got Sean Manaea who woke up one day and said, "I want to pitch like Chris Sale," and he did. He was phenomenal last season, right? A quick, bit of adjustment, I guess, in his arm slot, lowering that angle a little bit from July on. He was dominant. So for him to come back, Johan Santana was at camp the other day too, showing him his changeup. If he can kind of nail that down, Mets hitting, right, the 1, 2, 3. You've got Alvarez, who was hitting in the 4th spot the other day too. I think it's going to be a great, great season for him. He's due for, 20 plus, maybe even 30 plus home runs as a catcher with, coming off an injury, but with the pitching. You've got a really, really scary Mets roster if you're facing them this season.
Now, I'm going to be bold and say that even without Senga, 2024 was probably the most exciting Mets season of my lifetime because they seemed to be completely out of the race at the beginning of June when they were 11 games under 500. And then unexpectedly, they turned everything around. OMG became their unofficial motto, and the positive energy just kept feeding off itself. How important is that chemistry and that momentum as they head into spring?
I think especially, right? It was one of the things that carried them, right? You've got Francisco Lindor, who's not only an incredible defender, an incredible, right, offensive threat, but he took it upon himself to kind of take charge of that team morale, that team kind of cohesiveness. He called that players meeting at the end of May, which is kind of when they went into their June bloom, right? They had a turnaround, best record in baseball in June. Um, and then all of those things kind of fell into place. When you have those funny, silly gimmick things to maybe believe in, right? And call them good luck charms, since baseball players are, right, extremely superstitious, as we all know. Something to kind of lean on, something that makes things fun in that sense. It really brought them together, I think, especially. Um, Maybe there could be the opportunity for Jose Iglesias to come back, especially with Nick Madrigal going down yesterday with a dislocated shoulder. To maybe bring back some of those good vibes, if anything. But at the same time, right, there's still a job to do. And the introduction of Soto, as I saw in batting practice the other day, right, they're having fun on the field. Him and Lindor are joking around, right? They're doing line out competitions in the batting cage, right? You've got Jesse Winker, who's trying to soak it all in. He was sitting and talking with Juan Soto a lot and really kind of tweaking his stance, tweaking kind of his follow through to really drive the ball. With the two of them being, consistent left-handed batters in the lineup, and then you've got right, him and Lindor kind of just joking around. They're doing push-ups for if they, kind of maybe fly out or whatever it looks like it in batting practice. It was just, you can already tell that they're having fun. They're having a really good time. And I think that's going to be a big, big thing that's going to even, drive them further now that they've addressed the gaps in what they maybe didn't have that would have taken them all the way last year.
Chemistry creates winning for sure. Now, are there any prospects we should keep an eye on this year?
I think Brandon Sproat is going to be a big, big thing, especially with him kind of having a really good camp already. He was throwing live BP the other day. He looks really good. I think that, especially in the press events that he's done already, he's already, addressed kind of the things that he struggled with. One of the main things being, I think, the change in the ball, right? I was talking with a couple people that were down on the field during batting practice and kind of just soaking it all in. And one of the things that came up with Brandon Sproat, especially as he's, the number one pitching prospect for the Mets, is maybe that change in the ball from single A, double A, triple A, triple A. They use the major league ball. So that could have been it. It's tweaking mechanics, right? Pitchers are kind of a freak of nature, if anything. But he really dominated in single and double A. His fastball sits between 95 and gets up to the triple digits. He's definitely going to be a threat, I think, especially with Jose Budo being slated as a reliever and with Frankie Montas going down. Maybe he'll be making a major league appearance sooner than people really thought, but he's having a really good camp so far. So I don't think it's totally out of the question for him to be coming up this year. Other prospects to look out for, right? You have Luis Angel and Acuna, who came up last season to fill in for Francisco Lindor, right? He's got great pop. He's very, very controlled in the box. And I think he's also a great asset. Jet Williams is another one. He is maybe kind of flying under the radar with some injury in the past, but at the same time, he is one of those utility guys he gets on base and he's a great defender as well. So I think them especially. Sprout, I think, is probably going to be the one that's the most exciting. There's a lot of buzz around him at camp, but at the same time, right, you've got those other kind of guys who will continue the success that I think the Mets have really been trying to echo through the whole organization, not just getting those big heavy hitting guys at the major league level, but, threading that success and the constant working and things like that throughout the whole system. I think especially maybe where guys go up or down or something like that. You've got those strong prospects to really step up.
And Gabrielle, last question. This year, the Mets are going retro with the cursive New York font across their chests, something they wore for just 1 year in 1987, right after they won the World Series. I was only a year old at the time, so I don't remember it, but I personally don't mind the look. I think it's a classy throwback. How do you feel about it?
I love it. I think it's fresh, right? I think the jersey, while there's a lot of controversy around there not being like a white detail to be able to see the contrast, um, I will say, while I was at Clover Park the other day, it was a little hard to see the names and the numbers from the outfield, but I think on camera it looks really crisp. It's really fresh. I like the retro thing, especially with the Mets who are all about history. I love it. I think it's really cool looking.
Gabrielle Raucci, our Mets guru. I'm sure I'll be talking to you a lot this season. Thanks so much for coming on this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
Head over to ONNJ.com for the latest news and sports anytime.